At my son's wedding, which I paid for, entirely his new wife introduced me to her wealthy family with a microphone in her hand. She pointed a manicured finger at me and announced to the room that this was the old fat pig they had to put up with. Her family laughed. My son laughed. It was the punchline to a joke I did not know I was part of. But the laughter died instantly when her father looked at me. He did not see a pig. He saw the man who had just signed his employment contract. He went pale and whispered, "Wait, aren't you my new boss?" That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being the father and started being the chairman. But to understand why I destroyed them, you have to understand how much I loved them first. Before I continue this story, please like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you. I sat alone in my kitchen. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the scrape of my fork against a tin can. I was eating cold beans directly from the can because I simply did not feel like dirtying a plate. To the outside world, this was the sad dinner of Jerome Patterson, a 69-year-old retiree who had let life pass him by. My kitchen cabinets were old oak, the linoleum floor was peeling in the corner, and I wore a flannel shirt that I had bought at a discount store 5 years ago. This was the image I projected. It was a comfortable skin to wear. It allowed me to see who people truly were. My son Brandon did not know that the man eating cold beans was also the majority shareholder of Apex Holdings. He did not know that earlier that morning I had authorized a $450 million acquisition of the largest logistics supply chain in the Midwest. He did not know that my net worth hovered somewhere near $500 million. He only knew me as the dad who drove a beat-up Ford F-150 and clipped coupons for groceries. I never corrected him. I wanted him to build his own character. I wanted him to understand the value of a dollar without the safety net of my shadow. I failed. My phone rang, shattering the silence of the kitchen. The screen lit up with Brandon's name. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and answered. There was no greeting. There was no question about my health or my day. There was only the frantic, entitled tone of a 32-year-old man who still acted like a teenager. "Dad, I need $5,000 right now." I leaned back in my chair. The request was not a question. It was a demand. I took a slow breath. "Hello to you too, Brandon. I am doing fine, thanks for asking." "Cut it out, Dad." "I am serious. Vanessa and I found the venue. The Grand Estate. They have a cancellation for June 15th, but we have to put the deposit down within the hour, or we lose the date. It is perfect. It is exactly what Vanessa wants. $5,000 was nothing to me. I made $5,000 in the time it took me to open the can of beans. But that was not the point. Brandon was a real estate agent who had not sold a single house in 6 months. He lived beyond his means to impress a woman who measured love in carats and square footage. That is a lot of money, son. Have you looked at more affordable options? The community center has a lovely hall. I could hear the scoff on the other end of the line. It was a sharp, dismissive sound. The community center. Are you kidding me? Vanessa would leave me. She deserves the best. Look, do you have the money or not? You have your pension. You have those savings you never touch. Just transfer it. I will pay you back when I close the deal on the Henderson property." He would not close the Henderson property. I knew that because I had already bought the Henderson property through a shell company 2 days ago, and Brandon had not even followed up with the listing agent. He was lying to me. He was lying to himself. I rubbed my temples. I wanted him to be happy. That was the curse of a parent. You see the cliff, but you build the bridge anyway because you cannot bear to watch them fall. Fine. I will transfer it. But Brandon, you need to start budgeting. A wedding is 1 day. A marriage is a lifetime. You cannot build a life on debt. Yeah, save the lecture for Sunday school. Just send the confirmation screenshot. so I can show Vanessa. She is freaking out." The line went dead. He hung up. He did not say thank you. He did not say goodbye. He got what he wanted and discarded the source. I looked at the phone for a long time. I opened my banking app, bypassed the main accounts that would have given me away, and accessed the small checking account I used for my cover. I transferred the money. Then I went back to my cold beans. They tasted like ash. 2 days later, I drove my truck across town to their apartment. It was a sleek, modern complex with glass balconies and a parking lot full of leased BMWs and Mercedes. My 2010 Ford F-150 rumbled like a dying beast as I pulled up to the gate. The security guard looked at my truck with suspicion until I gave him Brandon's unit number. I parked next to Brandon's leased Audi. The contrast was poetic. The truck was owned, paid for, and reliable. The Audi was a monthly payment he could barely afford, a shiny shell with nothing inside. I walked up the stairs carrying a thick envelope. Brandon had texted me again, asking for cash for caterer tastings. He said his credit card was maxed out due to a bank error. I knew it was maxed out because he had spent $3,000 on a watch he did not need. I decided to bring cash. I wanted to see them. I wanted to look them in the eye. I knocked on the door. Vanessa opened it. She was beautiful in the way a porcelain doll is beautiful, cold, painted, and fragile. She wore a silk robe that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her eyes dropped instantly to my shoes. They were sturdy, comfortable work boots, scuffed at the toes. She grimaced. It was a small twitch of her nose, as if she had smelled something rotting. "Oh, it is you. Brandon said you might stop by." She did not step aside to let me in. She stood in the doorway, blocking the view of the apartment I was paying the rent for. "Hello, Vanessa. I brought the cash Brandon asked for. Is he home? He is on a conference call. Big clients. He cannot be disturbed." I knew Brandon was likely playing video games or napping, but I nodded. I held out the envelope. Vanessa reached for it. Her fingers were manicured to sharp points. She took the envelope by the very corner, as if my poverty might be contagious. She did not look at my face. She looked at the truck parked behind me in the lot. "Jerry, really? You parked that thing right in front. We have neighbors, you know. Important people. It looks like the gardener parked in the wrong spot." I felt a tightening in my chest. It was not anger yet. It was a deep, heavy disappointment. "It runs fine, Vanessa. It gets me from point A to point B. It is an eyesore. Next time maybe park on the street and walk in. It is better for your heart anyway. You are looking a little heavy around the middle." She smiled then. It was a smile that did not reach her eyes. It was a smile that said she knew she could insult me because she held the prize. She had my son. She had the envelope. I was just the delivery boy. I will keep that in mind. Make sure Brandon gets this. It is for the catering. Right. Catering. We are going with the French fusion place. You probably would not like it. The portions are small. She closed the door. She did not invite me in for water. She did not thank me. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. I heard the lock click. Then I heard her voice, muffled but clear through the wood. "He is gone. God, he smells like old oil and onions. I need to wash my hands." Then I heard Brandon's voice. "Did he bring the money?" "Yes, I have it. But seriously, babe, you have to talk to him. He cannot come to the wedding looking like a hobo. It is embarrassing." I walked back to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was not a violent man. I was a businessman. I dealt in leverage, in assets, in hostile takeovers. I did not scream. I planned. I looked up at their balcony. They were living in a fantasy world funded by my silence. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They thought I was poor because I was modest. I started the engine. The truck roared to life. I drove away, but I did not go home. I drove to a quiet park, pulled out my burner phone, the one I used for business, and dialed a number. Leonard. It is Jerry. Leonard Katz answered on the first ring. He was my lawyer, my fixer, and the only person who knew the full extent of my double life. Afternoon, Jerry. What do you need? I need a full financial workup on the Harrington family, Reginald and Cynthia Harrington, and their daughter Vanessa. I want to know everything. Debts, assets, credit scores, hidden accounts. Everything. Consider it done. Is everything all right? No, everything is far from right. But it is going to be handled. Also, Leonard, prepare the paperwork for the acquisition of Harbor Logistics. I want to accelerate the timeline. Harbor Logistics. That is Reginald Harrington's employer, isn't it? He is the COO. Yes. He is. I want that deal closed and sealed before June 15th. But Leonard, this is vital. My name cannot appear on any public document yet. Use the holding company. Keep it blind. I do not want Rex Harrington to know he works for me until I am ready to tell him. I could hear the smile in Leonard's voice. Understood. It will be a ghost acquisition. Anything else? Yes. Find out who holds the lease on Brandon's apartment. I have a feeling I might need to become his landlord very soon. I hung up. The sun was setting over the city. I felt a cold resolve settling in my gut. I had tried love. I had tried generosity. Now I would try leverage. The conflict escalated 3 weeks later. The wedding planning was in full swing, and every conversation revolved around money. Brandon called me on a Thursday. He sounded panicked. Dad, you need to come to the tailor shop on 5th. We are doing the fittings for the groomsmen and the fathers. Vanessa says it is mandatory. I sighed. I hated fittings. I hated the pomp and circumstance. But I agreed. I drove to the shop. It was a high-end boutique with plush carpets and mirrors that stretched from floor to ceiling. Brandon was standing on a podium being measured by a man with a tape measure around his neck. Vanessa was sitting on a velvet sofa sipping champagne. Her mother, Cynthia, was next to her. They looked like two queens holding court. I walked in wearing my best Sunday suit. It was a navy blue suit I had bought at a department store 5 years ago. It was clean. It was pressed. It was respectable. Vanessa looked up. Her smile vanished. She put down her champagne glass with a sharp clink. Jerry, what are you wearing? I am wearing my suit, Vanessa. Brandon said to come for the fitting. I figured I would save you the trouble. I can wear this to the wedding. It fits fine. The room went silent. The tailor stopped measuring Brandon. Cynthia looked at me over the rim of her glasses with a look of pure pity. Vanessa stood up. She walked over to me, circling me like a shark. She reached out and touched the fabric of my lapel. She rubbed it between her fingers and let it drop as if it were sandpaper. Polyester blend. It is shiny, Jerry. You can see the shine under the lights. It is wool, actually. And it is perfectly fine. It is not fine. This is a black tie event. It is going to be in Vogue Bride magazine. My father is wearing a custom Tom Ford tuxedo. The groomsmen are wearing designer silk. And you want to show up in this sack. She turned to Brandon. Tell him, Brandon. Tell him he cannot wear this. Brandon looked at me from the podium. He looked trapped. He looked small. Dad, maybe you should just try on the tux Vanessa picked out. It is really nice. I looked at the price tag on the mannequin next to me. $3,000 for the rental and fitting package. $3,000 for a suit I would wear for 6 hours. I am not spending $3,000 on a tuxedo, Brandon. That is absurd. I have a suit. I am the father of the groom, not a fashion model. I am paying for the catering. I am paying for the venue. I am paying for the flowers. I will wear the suit I own. Vanessa stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You are paying because that is your job. You are the father. But you will not ruin my photos. You look like a used car salesman. You look cheap. And if you stand next to my father looking like that, you are going to embarrass me. You are going to embarrass Brandon. She poked a finger against my chest. Do not be selfish, Jerry. For once in your life, stop counting pennies and try to have some class. Put on the tuxedo. I looked at her finger on my chest. I looked at her face twisted in a sneer of absolute superiority. She truly believed she was better than me. She believed her father, a man I knew was leveraging his company credit card to fund his lifestyle, was better than me. I gently moved her hand away from my chest. No. The word hung in the air. Vanessa blinked. She was not used to hearing that word. Excuse me. I said no. I will not wear the tuxedo. I will wear my suit. If that is too embarrassing for you, then perhaps I should not be in the photos at all. Perhaps I should just sit in the back with the distant cousins. Or perhaps I should not come. Vanessa laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. Oh, do not be dramatic. You will come. You have to write the check for the final balance on the venue next week. You will come and you will wear the tuxedo, or so help me God. I will make sure everyone knows exactly how cheap you are. I will make sure Brandon knows that his father cares more about $3,000 than his son's happiness. She turned her back on me and sat down. Measure him, she ordered the tailor. He will pay. The tailor approached me, tape measure in hand, looking nervous. Sir, if you would just lift your arms. I looked at the tailor. I looked at Brandon, who was staring at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. He was letting her talk to me like this. He was letting her strip away my dignity for the sake of an aesthetic. I did not lift my arms. I turned around and walked out of the shop. Jerry. Get back here, Vanessa screamed. I kept walking. I walked out to the street into the noise of the city. I loosened my tie. I took a deep breath of exhaust fumes and hot asphalt. It smelled like freedom. I took out my phone and called Leonard. Leonard. I am here, Jerry. The investigation on the Harringtons. Is it done? I have the preliminary report. It is interesting, Jerry. Very interesting. Reginald Harrington has a gambling problem. He is into the company for about $2 million. Embezzlement, creative accounting. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul is a bookie in Vegas. I stopped walking. A smile touched my lips. It was not a nice smile. He is stealing from the company. He is stealing from your company, Jerry. Technically, since you signed the acquisition papers this morning, he has been stealing from you. Does he know about the acquisition yet? No. The press release is scheduled for the 15th, the day of the wedding. Perfect. Keep it that way. And Leonard? Yes. Freeze the hiring of the private investigators for the wedding security. I want to make a change. I want you to hire a forensic accountant to be on standby, and get the legal team ready. I want audit papers drawn up. Audit papers? Yes. I am going to serve Reginald Harrington at the reception. But first, I am going to let them have their party. I am going to let them think they won. You are a cold man, Jerry. They called me a pig, Leonard. They called me cheap. I am just going to show them what happens when the pig owns the farm. I hung up the phone. I got into my truck. I drove to a drive-thru and ordered a burger. I ate it in the parking lot, watching the sun go down. I was done being the victim. I was done being the quiet, supportive father. I was about to become the lesson they would never forget. That night, Brandon texted me. Mom says you ruined the fitting. She says you were aggressive. Just pay for the tux, Dad. Please, do it for me. I looked at the text. I typed a response. I will take care of it. I did not specify what it was. He assumed I meant the tuxedo. I meant his entire world. I sent the text. Then I went to sleep, and I slept like a baby. The wedding was 2 weeks away. The countdown had begun. They wanted a show. I would give them a finale. The restaurant was called Le Monde. It was the kind of place where the menu had no prices and the water cost more than a gallon of gas. I arrived 15 minutes early. Punctuality is the courtesy of kings, my father used to say. It is also the habit of the working man. I parked my truck 3 blocks away to avoid the valet's sneer. I walked the rest of the distance. The evening air was cool, but inside the restaurant, the atmosphere was suffocatingly pretentious. The maitre d' stopped me at the door. He looked at my suit, the same navy blue wool blend Vanessa had despised, and then he looked at his reservation book. He did not ask for my name. He assumed I was a delivery driver. The service entrance is around the back, he said without looking up. I am here for the Patterson reservation, I replied calmly. He paused. He looked at me again. His eyebrows raised a fraction of an inch. Oh, the Patterson party. Of course. He led me to a table. It was not a good table. It was near the kitchen doors, tucked behind a decorative fern. It was the table you give to people you want to hide. I did not complain. I sat down. I ordered a glass of tap water. I waited. From my vantage point, I could see the entire dining room. I could see the people pretending to be happy, pretending to be rich. I watched the door. At 7:15, 15 minutes late, they arrived. I heard them before I saw them. The roar of an engine cut through the muffled conversations of the dining room. I looked out the window. A silver Porsche 911 pulled up to the curb. It was aggressive. It was loud. The valet rushed over. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. This was Reginald Harrington. Rex. He was a large man, but not in a muscular way. He carried his weight in his chest and belly wrapped tightly in a gray suit that looked expensive but fit poorly. He threw the keys to the valet without making eye contact. I watched the keys fly through the air. I saw the yellow plastic tag dangling from the ring. Hertz Rental, Premium Collection. I smiled into my water glass. He was driving a rental to a dinner he intended to dominate. A woman stepped out of the passenger side. Cynthia. She was dressed in layers of silk and chiffon dripping with gold jewelry that caught the streetlights. She adjusted her hair, checked her reflection in the car window, and then took Rex's arm. They marched toward the entrance like conquering generals. Vanessa and Brandon were waiting for them in the lobby. I saw the way Brandon shrank when Rex approached him. I saw the way Vanessa preened under her mother's inspection. They walked into the dining room. The maitre d' practically bowed. He did not try to hide them behind a fern. He led them to the center of the room, to a round table under the chandelier. I stood up and walked over to join them. I was the ghost at the feast. Rex saw me first. He stopped mid-laugh. His eyes traveled from my scuffed shoes to my off-the-rack tie. His expression did not change, but his eyes went cold. It was the look a man gives a stain on his carpet. And this must be... Jerome, Vanessa said, her voice tight. Jerry, I corrected. Nice to meet you. I extended my hand. Rex looked at it for a second too long before taking it. His palm was damp. His grip was weak, the handshake of a man who has never done manual labor in his life. Rex Harrington, he boomed. His voice was too loud for the room. TOO of Harbor Logistics. I know who you are, I thought. I own you. Pleasure, I said. Cynthia did not offer her hand. She gave me a small, tight nod. We heard you worked in transportation, she said. The word sounded dirty in her mouth. I drove trucks for a while, I said. Now I am retired. Rex laughed. It was a barking sound. Trucks. Well, someone has to move the goods, I suppose. Essential work. Very blue collar. He sat down at the head of the table. He did not wait for anyone else. He snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. Champagne. A bottle of your best. And bring the wine list. The real one, not the house list. He looked around the table, making sure everyone had seen him command the room. Then he looked at me again. So, Jerry, Brandon tells us you are helping with the wedding. That is surprisingly generous of you given your situation. My situation. He meant my poverty. He meant the fact that I looked like I belonged in the kitchen, not at the table. I do what I can for my son, I said. Rex nodded, peeling the wrapper off a breadstick. Right. Well, we certainly appreciate the effort. Vanessa deserves a perfect day. We are used to a certain standard, you understand. The Harringtons do not do things by halves. He leaned back, spreading his arms. Just last month, Cynthia and I were in Milan. Fashion Week. Chaos, absolute chaos, but the energy is undeniable. We stayed at the Bulgari. Have you ever been to Milan, Jerry? No, I said. I haven't. I had been to Milan 3 times that year for board meetings. I owned a stake in the hotel he mentioned. A shame, Rex said. You really get a sense of culture there, a sense of history. We picked up a few pieces for the house. Antiques, very rare. He was establishing dominance. He was marking his territory. He wanted me to know that he was worldly wealthy and sophisticated, and I was just the man who wrote the check for the venue he could not afford. The waiter arrived with the champagne. He poured a glass for everyone. When he got to me, Rex held up a hand. Maybe a beer for Jerry? Do you have anything domestic? The waiter hesitated. We have a selection of craft lagers, sir. Great. Bring him one of those. He probably prefers it to Dom Perignon. It is an acquired taste. He winked at me. It was not a friendly wink. It was a power move. He was deciding what I drank. He was deciding who I was. Brandon looked down at the tablecloth. Vanessa suppressed a giggle. I will have the champagne, thank you, I said to the waiter. Rex's smile faltered. Suit yourself. I just didn't want you to feel out of place. He raised his glass. To the happy couple. And to the union of 2 families, however different they may be. We drank. The champagne was cold and crisp. Rex slammed his glass down. So let's talk business. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I assume the payments are all up to date. I don't want any embarrassing phone calls from vendors while I am trying to enjoy my daughter's big day. They are handled, I said. Good. Because I am importing the wine myself. A private shipment. French vintage. I have connections at the port. We bypass the usual channels. Saves a fortune in taxes, if you know what I mean. He tapped the side of his nose. You are smuggling the wine, I asked. Rex laughed again. Smuggling is such an ugly word. Let's call it creative logistics. That is the benefit of being in the industry, Jerry. You learn how the world really works. You learn how to open doors that are locked for the common man. He looked at me with pure condescension. But I suppose in your line of work, the only doors you opened were the ones on the back of a trailer. Cynthia touched his arm. Rex, behave. You are overwhelming him. He probably doesn't understand corporate logistics. Oh, I think he understands enough, Rex said. He understands that some people drive the truck and some people own the cargo. It is the natural order of things. I looked at Rex. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. I looked at the way he kept glancing at his phone, checking for messages. He was nervous. He was a man walking a tightrope. He was bragging about tax evasion to a stranger because he needed to feel powerful. He needed to prove he was the alpha in the room. I took a sip of my champagne. Creative logistics, I repeated. That sounds risky. Rex waved a hand dismissively. Risk is for people who don't have leverage. I have leverage. I run the operations. The CEO is just a figurehead. I make the wheels turn. Harbor logistics would collapse without me. He was digging his own grave with a silver spoon. He was confessing to crimes I already suspected, and he was doing it to impress a man he considered a nobody. I memorized every word. I memorized the arrogance. The waiter returned to take our orders. Rex ordered the lobster thermidor for himself and the filet mignon for Cynthia. He ordered for Vanessa. Then he looked at me. The chicken is usually safe, Jerry. Or the pasta. Hard to mess up pasta. I looked at the menu. I closed it. I will have the ribeye rare, and bring another bottle of champagne. Rex raised his eyebrows. Big spender tonight, huh? Careful, Jerry. You don't want to blow your pension in one meal. I looked him in the eye. For the first time that night, I let a fraction of the mask slip. I let him see the coldness in my gaze. I think I can manage, Rex. He blinked. He felt the shift, but he was too drunk on his own ego to understand it. He just laughed and turned back to Cynthia, launching into a story about his golf handicap. He did not know that the man sitting across from him was not just a retired truck driver. He did not know that he was sitting across from the man who was about to audit his entire life. The dinner had just begun, and he had already given me everything I needed. The arrival of the main course signaled the beginning of the real sport. For men like Rex Harrington, food was not sustenance. It was a prop. It was a weapon. The waiter placed a massive bone-in ribeye in front of me. It was seared perfectly, the fat rendered just right, smelling of rosemary and garlic. I picked up my steak knife. It was heavy, a good tool. I cut into the meat. Rex watched my hands. He did not look at my face. He looked at the way I held the knife. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, violating the etiquette he claimed to cherish. You have a very firm grip there, Jerry. I paused. I looked at my hand. It was steady. I suppose so. It is the grip of a man who has spent a lot of time holding onto a steering wheel. White knuckles, 10 and 2. It is distinct. You cannot wash that kind of tension off. It settles in the joints. He sliced his own lobster with a delicate, almost feminine motion, then pointed his fork at me. My father was a laborer. Did I tell you that? He worked in a mill. He had hands like yours. Rough, calloused, permanently stained with grease. He used to come home and scrub them with pumice stone until they bled, but the dirt never really came out. It was in his DNA. He put a piece of lobster in his mouth and chewed slowly. I promised myself I would never have hands like that. I promised myself I would make a living with my mind, not my back. That is the difference between us, Jerry. Evolution. Some of us evolved to sign checks and some of us stayed behind to lift the boxes. Vanessa laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound, like breaking glass. She picked at her salad, pushing a piece of arugula around the plate. Oh, Daddy, do not be mean. Jerry cannot help it. Not everyone has your drive. Besides, someone has to do the grunt work. If everyone was a CEO who would deliver our Amazon packages. She looked at me with a smile that was pure venom. Right, Jerry. It is honorable work. That is what they say, isn't it? Honorable. That is the word people use when the pay is terrible and the hours are long. I chewed my steak. It was delicious. I did not let their words affect my appetite. I swallowed and took a sip of water. It put food on the table, Vanessa. It paid for Brandon's college. Brandon flinched. He was staring at his pasta as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. He did not defend me. He did not look up. He just shrank a little further into his expensive suit. Rex swirled his wine. The liquid coated the glass in a dark red film. College. Yes. Brandon tells me you refinanced your house to pay for his tuition. That is quaint. A real sacrifice. See, when Vanessa went to Sorbonne, I just wrote a check. I did not have to leverage my shelter to educate my child. But that is the liquidity trap. The lower classes are always one emergency away from ruin. It must be stressful, Jerry, living on the edge like that. It has its moments, I said neutrally. I bet. You know, at Harbor Logistics, we deal with independent contractors all the time. Drivers, owner-operators. They come into my office hat in hand begging for better rates. They smell like diesel and desperation. I have to air out the room after they leave. He took a long drink of wine. I usually cut their rates. Do you know why? Because they need me more than I need them. There is always another driver. There is always another man willing to sell his time for pennies. They are a dime a dozen. Expendable. He was testing me. He wanted me to get angry. He wanted me to slam my fist on the table and defend the dignity of the working man so he could laugh at my emotion. I did not give him the satisfaction. I kept my face blank. I kept my voice even. Supply and demand. Rex. It is basic economics. Rex blinked. He seemed disappointed that I knew the term. Exactly. Supply and demand. And right now the demand is for efficiency. We are automating. In 5 years we won't need drivers. We will have autonomous fleets. Men like you will be obsolete. Dinosaurs. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. That is why I am moving assets. Diversifying. You have to stay ahead of the curve. I have been moving capital into offshore accounts in the Caymans. Shell companies. Real estate in non-extradition countries. You have to protect what is yours, Jerry. The taxman is a thief. The government wants to punish success. My internal radar pinged loud and clear. He was confessing. He was so convinced that I was a nobody, a simpleton who wouldn't understand corporate structuring, that he was openly bragging about tax evasion and money laundering. Caymans, I said, feigning ignorance. Is that legal? Rex laughed so hard he choked on his wine. Cynthia patted him on the back, looking bored. Legal. Jerry, legality is a construct for poor people. It is a fence to keep the sheep in line. When you have resources, you don't worry about what is legal. You worry about what is enforceable. And my lawyers make sure nothing is enforceable. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. I have inventory write-offs that would make your head spin. We declare a container lost at sea, collect the insurance, and sell the goods on the secondary market. It is free money. And the best part, the auditors never look twice. They see a big company, they see a nice suit, and they assume everything is in order. Appearance is everything. He pointed his fork at my suit. That is why you will never sit at the big table, Jerry. You look like a man who follows the rules. You look like a man who stops at red lights at 3 in the morning when no one is around. I memorized that. Inventory fraud, insurance fraud, secondary market sales. It was a checklist for the forensic accountants I had on standby. Vanessa chimed in, bored with the business talk. She wanted to get back to personal insults. Daddy, stop boring him. He doesn't understand high finance. Look at him. He is still eating that steak like it is his last meal. She looked at my plate, which was half empty. Seriously, Jerry, you should slow down. At your age with your physique, you are a ticking time bomb. High blood pressure, cholesterol. I bet you don't even have a gym membership. I walk a lot, I said. Walking. That is cute. My father has a personal trainer who comes to the house 3 times a week. He takes hormone supplements. He is optimizing his biology. You are just decaying. She gestured vaguely at my midsection. We don't want you dropping dead at the reception. It would ruin the vibe. Plus, funerals are expensive. I don't think Brandon has the budget to bury you properly. We would probably have to cremate you. It is cheaper. Brandon finally spoke up. His voice was weak, a whisper. Vanessa, don't say that. She snapped her head toward him. Why not? It is practical, Brandon. Your father has no assets. If he has a stroke tomorrow, who pays the bills? Us. We become his nurses. And I am telling you right now, I am not changing diapers for a retired truck driver. Cynthia nodded in agreement, speaking for the first time in a while. She is right, Brandon. You have to think about the future. When people of limited means get old, they become a burden. We have been looking into state-funded facilities for Jerry, just in case. There are some decent ones upstate. They smell a bit like bleach and cabbage, but they keep them alive. They were discussing my institutionalization while I sat 3 feet away eating a ribeye. They were planning to discard me like a used wrapper. Rex poured himself more wine. He was drunk on his own power now. It is the circle of life, Jerry. Some people climb the mountain, and some people fall off. You fell off a long time ago. You just haven't hit the ground yet. But don't worry. When the time comes, we will make sure you are comfortable. We will put you in a home where you can watch TV and play bingo. You won't even know the difference. He looked at me with eyes that were glassy and cruel. You should be grateful. Most men in your position end up on the street. But you have us, you have the Harringtons. We are benevolent rulers. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To charity. I looked at him. I looked at Vanessa, who was checking her reflections in her spoon. I looked at Cynthia, who was adjusting her diamonds. And I looked at Brandon, who was staring at his lap, defeated. I raised my water glass. To charity, I said. I drank. The water was cool. The fire in my belly was hot. Rex Harrington had just admitted to multiple felonies. He had threatened my future. He had insulted my existence. He thought he was a king holding court with a peasant. He did not know that the peasant had just bought the castle, the land, and the very chair he was sitting on. I finished my steak. I ate every bite. I savored it. It was the fuel I would need for the war that was coming. They wanted to talk about biology. They wanted to talk about survival of the fittest. I was about to show them that in the corporate jungle, the lion does not roar before he strikes. He waits until the prey is fat, drunk, and stupid. And Rex Harrington was the fattest prey I had ever seen. The waiter cleared the plates. The remnants of the lobster shells and the bone from my ribeye were taken away, leaving only the white tablecloth and the heavy silence of a battlefield after the shooting has stopped. Then came the black leather folder. It was placed discreetly in the center of the table, a landmine waiting to be stepped on. I knew the total without looking. 4 bottles of Dom Perignon, lobster, filet mignon, appetizers, desserts. We were looking at $4,000 easy. Rex reached for the folder first. It was a reflex. The alpha male always checks the damage. He opened it, looked at the slip of paper, and let out a low whistle. Quality costs, he muttered. Then the performance began. I had seen bad acting in community theater, but this was a masterclass in deception. Rex reached for his inside jacket pocket. He patted his chest. He frowned. He reached for his back pocket. He patted his hip. His eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. He checked the side pockets. Nothing. He looked at Cynthia with wide, innocent eyes. Honey, do you have my wallet? I must have left it in the valet tray when I changed suits at the hotel. Cynthia did not even look up from her compact mirror. She was applying a fresh layer of lipstick. You know I never carry money, Rex. I only carry my ID. You said you had it covered. Rex looked at the table. He looked at the waiter who was hovering nearby. He looked at me. A slow, shark-like smile spread across his face. Well, this is awkward. I seem to be temporarily indisposed. I have left my cards at the Bulgari. He slid the black folder across the tablecloth. It stopped inches from my water glass. Jerry, hate to ask, but could you cover this? I will wire you the money first thing in the morning. Or better yet, I will have my assistant cut you a check. It was not a request. It was a trap. He had his wallet. I could see the outline of it in his left breast pocket. He wanted to see me bleed. He wanted to see if the truck driver could absorb a $4,000 blow without flinching. Or better yet, he wanted to see me fail. I looked at the folder. I looked at Brandon. My son was pale. He knew I lived on a fixed income. He knew $4,000 was a fortune to the version of his father he thought existed. Dad, Brandon whispered, I can put it on my card. I think I have enough limit left. Vanessa slapped his hand away. Her eyes were fixed on me. She was like a predator smelling fear. No, Brandon. You are saving for the house. You are already paying for the rehearsal dinner. Your father should pay. She leaned toward me. It is tradition, isn't it, Jerry? The groom's family handles the rehearsal dinner, but since you are contributing so little to the actual wedding, this is the least you can do. Consider it your contribution to the alliance. Unless, of course, you can't afford it. She let the question hang there. Can't you afford it? It was the ultimate insult in their world. If I paid, I was broke for months. If I couldn't pay, I was humiliated. It was a win-win for them. I picked up the folder. I opened it. $4,280 with tax. I slowly reached into my back pocket and pulled out my old bifold leather wallet. It was cracked at the seams. I opened it. There was no cash. Just a few receipts and a single credit card. It was a secured credit card from a local credit union. The limit was $500. I used it to buy gas and build a credit score for this specific alias. I pulled the card out. It was blue and flimsy. I will get it, I said. Rex's eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected me to agree. He expected me to beg. He watched as I placed the card in the folder and handed it to the waiter. Thank you, sir, the waiter said. He walked away. The minutes that followed were the longest of Brandon's life. He was sweating. He was drinking water nervously. Vanessa was tapping her acrylic nails on the table, a rhythmic clicking sound that grated on my nerves. Rex was relaxed. He was leaning back, picking his teeth with a toothpick, watching me. You sure you are okay with that? Jerry Rex asked. Interest rates are killer these days. Hate to see you paying off a dinner for the next 5 years. I will manage, I said. I was counting the seconds. I knew exactly how long the transaction would take. I knew the machine would think for a moment, try to ping the bank, and then spit out a rejection code. The waiter returned. He was not smiling anymore. He walked up to my side of the table. He did not hand me the folder. He held it against his chest. Sir, could I have a word? Speak up, Vanessa snapped. We are all family here. What is the problem? The waiter flinched. He looked at me with genuine pity. I am sorry, sir. The card was declined. Do you have another form of payment? The silence crashed down on the table. It was heavy. It was absolute. Brandon made a small, choked noise in his throat. Cynthia stopped checking her reflection. Rex let out a short, sharp laugh. Declined. Rex boomed. Oh, Jerry. That is rich. That is truly rich. Vanessa looked at me with a disgust so profound it felt physical. She looked at me as if I had just vomited on the table. You have to be kidding me, she hissed. You tried to pay a $4,000 bill with a card that doesn't work. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? People are looking at us. I took the card back from the waiter. I put it in my wallet. I did not look ashamed. I looked calm. This infuriated her more. I must have hit my limit, I said simply. I bought new tires for the truck last week. Tires, Vanessa shrieked. Her voice cracked. You prioritize tires over this dinner. We are sitting here with my parents, with people who matter, and you are declined because of truck tires. You are useless. You are absolutely useless. Brandon put his head in his hands. Dad, why didn't you tell me? I could have covered it. Rex held up a hand. He was enjoying this too much. He was the savior now. He was the hero of the tragedy he had orchestrated. Calm down, sweetheart. Do not be hard on him. It is not his fault he is insolvent. It is a systemic failure. The working class just cannot keep up with the cost of living. It is sad, really. He reached into his jacket pocket, the same pocket he had checked 3 minutes ago, the pocket that was supposedly empty. He pulled out a sleek metal card. It was heavy. It clattered against the table. It was a corporate American Express Platinum. I saw the logo embossed on the bottom. Harbor Logistics. Put it on this, Rex told the waiter, and add 20% for your trouble. I apologize for the inconvenience. My guest overreached. The waiter took the card with relief and hurried away. Rex looked at me. His eyes were hard. The amusement was gone. Now there was just cold contempt. You see, Jerry, this is how the world works. There are people who create problems, and there are people who solve them. You are a problem. I am a solver. He leaned across the table. His breath smelled of expensive wine and decay. Do not ever try to sit at the big table again. You do not have the chips. You do not have the stamina, and you certainly do not have the credit. He pointed at Brandon. I am paying for this because he is marrying my daughter. I am investing in his potential. But you are a liability. You are dead weight. Do you know what we do with dead weight in my industry? We cut it loose. Vanessa nodded, her eyes shining with malice. Daddy is right. You are lucky we even invited you. You should have just stayed home with your beans and your truck. You are a stain on this family. I sat there. I took it. I let their words wash over me. I let them think they had broken me. I watched Rex sign the receipt with a flourish. I watched him pocket the corporate card, the evidence of his embezzlement, right in front of my eyes. He had just used company funds for a personal dinner. It was a felony. It was recorded. It was auditable. Thank you, Rex, I said quietly. That was generous. Rex stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked down at me from his height. It wasn't generosity, Jerry. It was pity. There is a difference. Generosity is between equals. Pity is what you give to a dog that's been kicked too many times. He turned to Cynthia and Vanessa. Come on, let's go. The smell of failure is giving me a headache. They walked out. They left me sitting at the table. Brandon lingered for a second. He looked at me, his eyes full of tears and shame. I am sorry, Dad, he whispered. Go, Brandon, I said. Go with them. He turned and ran after them, a puppy chasing its abusive master. I sat alone in the empty dining room. The waiter came back to clear the glasses. He looked at me nervously. Can I get you anything else, sir? Water. No, I said. I am full. I stood up. I walked out the back door past the kitchen where the staff was scrubbing pots. I walked to my truck. I sat in the dark cab and pulled out my burner phone. I dialed Leonard. Did you get it? Leonard asked. I got it, I said. He paid with the corporate card, Harbor Logistics expense account. $4,000 for a personal dinner. It is on the receipt. Got him, Leonard said. That is the nail in the coffin. We have cause for immediate termination and criminal prosecution. Not yet, I said. Not yet. Let him feel good. Let him feel like a king. The higher he climbs, the harder he falls. I started the truck. The engine coughed and sputtered, then roared to life. I drove home to my cold beans. They thought I was the dog. They did not know I was the one holding the leash, and in 2 weeks at the wedding of the century, I was going to pull it tight. 2 days after the dinner from hell, my son Brandon appeared on my doorstep. It was raining, a cold gray drizzle that slicked the streets and made the world look like a watercolor painting left out in the storm. Brandon did not have an umbrella. He stood on my porch, water dripping from his nose, his expensive suit soaked through. He looked like a man who had been running for a long time and had finally hit a wall. I opened the door. I did not invite him in immediately. I let him stand there for a moment, shivering. I wanted him to feel the cold. I wanted him to remember what it felt like to be outside looking in. "Come in," I said finally. He stepped inside. He did not wipe his feet. He walked straight to the kitchen table and collapsed into a chair. He put his head in his hands. I watched him. I saw the tremors in his shoulders. I saw the way his fingers dug into his scalp. This was not a social call. This was a crisis. "She is going to leave me, Dad," he whispered. I poured a cup of coffee. Instant, black. I placed it in front of him. "Who is going to leave you, Brandon?" "Vanessa." She gave me an ultimatum. She saw pictures of the Johnson wedding at the Grand Estate. She says the hotel ballroom we booked is trash. She says it smells like old carpet and desperation. She wants the Grand Estate, Dad. She says if we don't book it, there is no wedding. I took a sip of my own coffee. The Grand Estate. It was a sprawling mansion on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. It was the kind of place where senators and tech moguls got married. It was not a place for a real estate agent who had not sold a house in 6 months, and a woman who thought credit limits were suggestions. And what is the problem, I asked. The problem is the cost. They want $150,000, upfront, non-refundable. I let out a low whistle. It was a lot of money. It was more than the average American made in 3 years. It was enough to buy a house in some parts of the country. And she wanted to blow it on a 6-hour party. "I assume you told her that is impossible," I said. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. They were wild. "I can't tell her that. If I tell her no, she walks. She is serious, Dad. She has her bags packed. She is staying at her parents' house until I fix this. Rex told me that if I was a real man, I would make it happen. He said a man provides." Rex, of course. The man who had just expensed a $4,000 dinner to his company was lecturing my son on provision. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "So what do you want from me, Brandon? I am a retired truck driver. I have a pension. I have a beat-up truck. I do not have $150,000 lying around in a cookie jar." Brandon slid out of the chair. He got down on his knees. My son, 32 years old, a grown man, was kneeling on my linoleum floor in a wetsuit. It was pathetic. It was disgusting. It was necessary. "You have the house, Dad. You have equity. You have your retirement savings. I know you have it. You never spend anything. You have been saving for 40 years. Please, I am begging you. Just loan it to me. I will pay you back. I promise. As soon as the market turns, as soon as I get my commission on the Lakeside deal, I just need to keep her. I cannot lose her." I looked down at him. I saw the desperation. I saw the weakness. He was willing to bankrupt his father to keep a woman who called his father a pig. He was willing to sacrifice my security for her vanity. He did not care if I ended up on the street. He only cared if she ended up at the Grand Estate. "Get up," I said. He did not move. He grabbed my hand. His palms were clammy. "Please, Dad. Do this for me. Be a father. Be a father. That was the trigger. He invoked fatherhood to exploit me. He used the bond of blood to bleed me dry. I pulled my hand away. I walked to the counter. I opened a drawer. Inside, nestled between a stack of takeout menus and a box of matches, was a single sheet of paper. Leonard had prepared it that morning. It was a standard promissory note, or at least it looked like one. In reality, it was a secured loan agreement with a confession of judgment clause. It meant that if he defaulted, I could seize his assets immediately without a trial. It meant I owned him. I pulled the paper out. I placed it on the table. I also placed a pen next to it. It was a cheap Bic pen. "I will do it," I said. Brandon scrambled to his feet. His face lit up with a hope that was painful to watch. "Really? You will do it?" "Oh my God, Dad. Thank you. I knew you had it. I knew you were holding out." I held up a hand. "I will liquidate my savings. I will take a loan against the house. I will get you the money. But this is not a gift, Brandon. This is not charity. This is a loan. And I need security." He laughed. It was a hysterical, relieved sound. "Security? Sure. Anything. What do you want?" "Sign this," I said. I tapped the paper. "It is a promissory note. It acknowledges the debt. It says that if you do not pay me back within 5 years, or if you violate the terms of our agreement, I have the right to recoup my losses from your assets. Your car, your future earnings, your home." Brandon looked at the paper. He did not read it. He did not even glance at the fine print. He just saw the finish line. He saw Vanessa coming back to him. He saw Rex Harrington patting him on the back. He picked up the pen. "Of course. Whatever you want. 5 years. Easy. I will have it back to you in 2. He scribbled his name on the line. He signed away his financial freedom with a smile on his face. He signed it because he thought I was weak. He thought I was an old man who would never enforce a contract against his only son. He thought the money would die with me and the debt would be forgiven in the will. He handed the paper back to me. "You are the best dad. Seriously. You saved my life. Vanessa is going to be so happy." He did not ask if I would be okay. He did not ask how I would pay my bills with an empty savings account. He just took the victory and ran. "I will wire the money directly to the venue tomorrow," I said. "Tell Vanessa she has her castle." He hugged me. He got my shirt wet. Then he ran out the door back into the rain, dialing her number, before he even reached his car. I watched him go. I looked at the signature on the paper. It was sloppy. It was rushed. It was binding. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. It was cold. Everything was cold. I picked up my phone and called Leonard. "He signed," I said. "Did he read it?" Leonard asked. "No. He just signed. He thinks I am a piggy bank. He is going to find out you are the bank vault Jerry. What is the next move? Wire the funds to the Grand Estate. Pay in full. Put it under the shell company so they do not see my name on the check." And Leonard. "Yes. Start the foreclosure paperwork on his current apartment, the one I pay for. I want the eviction notice ready to be served the morning after the wedding." "That is harsh, Jerry. Even for you." He kneeled, Leonard. He kneeled and begged me to ruin myself so he could throw a party for a woman who hates me. He chose his side. Now he has to pay the admission fee. I hung up. The rain beat against the window. I was $150,000 poorer on paper, but I had just bought something priceless. I had bought the legal right to teach my son the hardest lesson of his life. The wedding was on. The venue was booked. The trap was set. And the pig was waiting in the mud. The next morning, the sun revealed the cracks in my kitchen walls that I had stopped noticing years ago. I sat at the table with two things in front of me. One was a confirmation number for a wire transfer of $150,000 to the Grand Estate. The other was the official notarized version of the promissory note Leonard had couriered over at dawn. The paper was heavy, the kind used for corporate mergers, not family loans. It was a document that breathed authority. Brandon arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. He did not knock this time. He barged in, bringing a gust of expensive cologne and manic energy with him. He was vibrating with adrenaline. He was a man who had stared into the abyss of a breakup and had been pulled back by his father's wallet. He looked at me, and for a second I saw genuine affection. But then his eyes drifted to the piece of paper on the table, and the affection curdled into something patronizing. "Did you do it, Dad?" he asked, breathless. "Did you send the money?" "Vanessa is waiting in the car. We are going to the venue to finalize the menu." "She is so happy, Dad." "You have no idea." I placed my hand over the wire confirmation. I did not give it to him yet. "The money is sent, Brandon. It is in escrow. But before I give you the release code, we need to formalize the agreement." I pushed the thick document toward him. It was 20 pages of dense legal text. It was a shark in paper form. It contained clauses that would make a loan shark blush. It granted me power of attorney in the event of a default. It waived his right to a trial. It collateralized his future inheritance, his current assets, and his commission checks. It was a masterclass in leverage. Brandon laughed. It was a high, incredulous sound. He picked up the document and flipped through the pages, barely glancing at the words. "Whoa, Dad. What is this? It looks like the Bible. Did you download a template from the internet or something? You really went all out playing banker." He looked at me with a smirk. He thought it was cute. He thought his old truck-driving father was trying to act important by printing out a big contract. He did not see the teeth in the trap. "It is standard," I said calmly. "I want to make sure we are both protected. You said you would pay me back in 2 years. This just puts it in writing." Brandon shook his head, chuckling as he pulled a pen from his jacket pocket. It was a Mont Blanc, likely fake or bought on credit. He tapped the pen against the paper. "Protected. Dad, you are lending money to your son, not buying a skyscraper. But hey, if it makes you feel better to play businessman, I will sign your little book report." He did not read a single line. He did not ask about the interest rate, which was set at the federal maximum. He did not ask about the acceleration clause, which meant I could demand full repayment immediately if he missed a single installment. He just flipped to the last page, looking for the signature line. "You know, Dad," he said, pausing with the pen hovering over the paper, "you are getting funny in your old age. First the suit, now the contracts. Are you sure you are feeling okay? You are not forgetting things, are you?" I looked at him steadily. "My memory is fine, Brandon." He laughed again, dismissing me. "I am just saying, you seem a little confused lately. Obsessing over pennies. Acting paranoid. Vanessa thinks maybe you are starting to lose it a little. You know, senile stuff. It happens. But don't worry. When you get to the point where you can't count your change anymore, we will take care of you. We will find you a nice place with a view." He signed his name with a flourish. A big looping signature that took up half the page. He was signing his death warrant, and he was mocking the executioner while he did it. He pushed the document back to me. "There. Happy. Now give me the code. We have a tasting at noon." He stood up, adjusting his suit jacket, looking at me with that pitying smile again. He really believed I was a senile old man clinging to relevance. He believed the contract was a prop to soothe my ego. He did not know that he had just handed me the deed to his life. I picked up the document. I checked the signature. It was valid. Here's the code, I said, handing him the slip of paper. He snatched it from my hand. Thanks, Dad. You are a lifesaver. Seriously, I gotta run. Vanessa hates waiting. He turned and walked out the door without looking back. He did not see me carefully fold the contract. He did not see me place it in a fireproof envelope. He did not see the look on my face. I walked to the window and watched him get into his leased Audi. Vanessa was in the passenger seat. She was wearing sunglasses that covered half her face. She did not look at the house. She did not wave. Brandon showed her the paper, and she clapped her hands. They high-fived. They were celebrating their victory. They were celebrating the fact that they had tricked the old man out of his savings. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The senile comment stuck in my throat like a fishbone. They were already planning my decline. They were already writing the script where I became a vegetable they could park in a facility while they spent my money. I took out my phone and dialed Leonard. He signed, I said. Is it done? Leonard asked. It is done. He didn't read a word. He called me senile Leonard. He told me he would put me in a home when I couldn't count my change. There was a silence on the line. Leonard knew me. He knew that I had a memory like a steel trap. He knew that I could recall the closing price of a stock from 10 years ago. That was a mistake, Leonard said softly. Yes. It was. File the lien, Leonard. Already. The wedding hasn't even happened. File it. I want it recorded at the county clerk's office today. It won't be active until I trigger the default, but I want it in the system. I want his name attached to that debt in public record. And Leonard. Yes, Jerry. Send the forensic team to Harbor Logistics tomorrow. I want the audit to begin. Rex Harrington thinks he is importing wine. He is about to import a federal investigation. Understood. I hung up. The house was quiet. I looked at the empty chair where Brandon had sat. My son was gone. The man who had walked out that door was a stranger who owed me $150,000 plus interest. I went to the fridge and opened a can of soda. I drank it standing up. The sweetness was cloying. I missed the days when a problem could be solved with a conversation. But those days were gone. Now I spoke the language of contracts. And in 2 weeks at the wedding, I was going to give a toast that would burn the house down. The pig was not just in the mud anymore. The pig was running the slaughterhouse. 3 days before the wedding, Rex Harrington called me. He did not say hello. He did not ask if I had a moment to talk. He simply started barking orders the second I picked up the phone. Jerry, listen close. I am swamped. The board is breathing down my neck about some quarterly projections. I need you to handle the grunt work for the reception setup. I was sitting in my home office looking at a live feed of those very quarterly projections on my laptop screen. The numbers were down. They were down because Rex was siphoning operating capital to pay his gambling debts. What do you need me to do, Rex? I need you to go to the venue and coordinate the ice delivery and the napkins. Make sure they fold them into swans, not fans. Vanessa hates fans. She says they look middle class. Ice and napkins. He was assigning me the tasks of a junior intern. I can handle that, I said. Good. Because I am handling the real logistics. The wine is arriving at the port today. A private container. Chateau Margaux, 1996. It is the nectar of the gods, Jerry. I had to pull every string I have to get it through customs without the usual bureaucracy. He chuckled. It was a wet, self-satisfied sound. I marked it as industrial lubricant on the manifest. Saves me about 40% in luxury tax. Plus, it bypasses the FDA inspection queue. That is how you win, Jerry. You reclassify reality. I froze. My hand tightened on the phone. He was confessing to customs fraud. He was admitting to falsifying a federal bill of lading. And he was doing it on a recorded line. although he didn't know I recorded every call that came to my personal phone. Is that safe, Rex? Won't they check? Who is going to check? I run the dock, Jerry. The inspectors are my friends. I buy them steak dinners. They see a crate marked Harbor Logistics Industrial Supply and they wave it through. It is airtight. Now go deal with the napkins. I have a company to run. He hung up. I set the phone down on my desk. I looked at the computer screen. I logged into the Apex Holdings secure server. Since the acquisition was finalized in secret, I had backdoor access to the Harbor Logistics inventory system. I typed in the search query, incoming shipments, origin France, destination Harbor Logistics Executive Suite. There it was. Container number HL409, declared content heavy machinery lubricant, weight 500 pounds, value declared $2,000. I clicked deeper. I pulled up the actual invoice attached to the purchase order. It wasn't $2,000 of grease. It was $50,000 of vintage wine. And the payment method was not Rex's personal account. It was the Harbor Logistics Operational Expense Fund. He was stealing from the company to buy wine for my son's wedding, and then he was smuggling it into the country to avoid taxes. It was a trifecta of stupidity. It was embezzlement, fraud, and smuggling all wrapped in a wooden crate. I called Leonard. Pull the manifest for container HL409, I said. I am looking at it right now, Leonard replied. Industrial lubricant. Very slick. It is wine, Leonard, 50 grand worth of Bordeaux, and he paid for it with company money. We have him, Jerry. This is a federal offense. We can call the feds right now. The wedding will be a crime scene. No, I want the physical evidence. I want the bottle in my hand. My phone beeped. A text message from Rex. Change of plans. My driver is sick. Go to Dock 4 at the warehouse. Pick up the crate marked HL409. Bring it to the venue. Do not drop it. It is worth more than your life. I laughed out loud in the empty kitchen. It was perfect. He was so arrogant, so lazy, that he was ordering the owner of the company to go pick up the stolen goods. He was making me an accessory to his crime, and in doing so, he was handing me the murder weapon. I drove my truck to the shipyard. The security guard at the gate stopped me. He looked at my beat-up Ford. You lost Pops. Deliveries are round back. I am here for a pickup. Rex Harrington sent me. The guard's face changed. He looked nervous. Oh. Mr. Harrington's special shipment. Yeah. Go to Bay 4. Ask for Vinny. I drove to Bay 4. It was a cavernous warehouse smelling of salt water and diesel. A man in a forklift was moving a wooden crate. He set it down on the loading dock. The crate was stamped with the Harbor Logistics logo and the words, "Industrial lubricant, do not consume." Vinny jumped down from the forklift. He looked at me with suspicion. You the guy for the Harrington pickup? That is me. Vinny spat on the ground. Heavy grease, huh? Smells like a winery in there if you get close enough. Don't shake it. He knew. Everyone knew. Rex wasn't a mastermind. He was just a bully who paid people off. I loaded the crate into the bed of my truck. It was heavy. I secured it with straps. Here's the paperwork, Vinny said, handing me a clipboard. Sign here. I looked at the document. It was the bill of lading. It listed the contents as industrial supplies. I signed my name. Jerome Patterson. Legible. Clear. I wanted my name on the chain of custody. I wanted to prove that I was the one who intercepted the contraband. I drove away from the docks. I did not go to the venue. I drove to my house. I pulled the truck into the garage and closed the door. I took a crowbar and pried the lid off the crate. Inside, nestled in straw, were rows of dark bottles with elegant labels. Chateau Margaux. I took one out. It was cool to the touch. I took a picture of the bottle. I took a picture of the crate with the false labeling. I took a picture of the invoice Vinny had given me. Then I called Leonard. I have the wine. Is it secure? It is in my garage. I am going to deliver it to the venue tomorrow just like he asked. But Leonard, make sure the audit team includes this container in their report. I want this specific crate to be the centerpiece of the indictment. You are going to let them drink the evidence at the wedding. Let them drink, I said. Let them toast to their own destruction. When the police walk in, I want Rex holding a glass of stolen wine in his hand. It will make the mugshot so much more poetic. I put the bottle back in the crate and nailed the lid shut. I went inside and washed the warehouse dust off my hands. Rex Harrington thought I was his errand boy. He thought I was fetching his party supplies. He did not realize that I wasn't delivering wine. I was delivering the evidence that would send him to federal prison. The pig was not just gathering mud anymore. The pig was gathering receipts. The morning before the wedding, I shed the skin of Jerry, the retired truck driver. I did not drive the Ford F-150. I left it in the garage next to the crate of stolen wine. I walked 2 blocks to a nondescript storage unit I rented under a different name. Inside was a black Mercedes S-Class polished to a mirror shine. It started with a purr that vibrated in my chest. I drove out of the suburbs and onto the highway heading toward the skyline that rose like a jagged set of teeth against the blue sky. I drove to the financial district. I pulled into the underground garage of the Apex Tower. The security camera scanned my license plate. The steel gate rolled up silently. I parked in the spot marked simply Chairman. There was no name, just the title. I took the private elevator to the 45th floor. The doors opened and the air changed. It was cooler here, cleaner. It smelled of ozone and money. I walked past the empty reception desk. It was Saturday, and the office was a ghost town of glass and chrome. I walked down the long corridor to the corner office. I opened the door. The city lay spread out below me, a grid of concrete and ambition. I stood there for a moment looking at the view. This was who I was. I was the man who built skyscrapers. I was the man who moved markets. I turned away from the window and sat behind the desk. It was a massive slab of black marble. Leonard Katz was sitting on the leather sofa, a file folder on his lap. He did not look up when I entered. He knew my footsteps. "Morning, Jerry," he said. Or should I say, Mr. Patterson. "Today it is Mr. Patterson Leonard. Jerry is taking a personal day." I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a gold fountain pen. It was heavy in my hand. It was the pen I used to sign death warrants for failing companies. "Is the paperwork ready?" Leonard stood up and placed the folder on the desk. He opened it. Inside was a stack of documents thick enough to stop a bullet. "The acquisition of Harbor Logistics is complete pending your signature," Leonard said. "We bought the debt from their creditors at 40 cents on the dollar. We bought the outstanding shares from the minority holders this morning. As soon as you sign this, you own 51% of the voting stock. You are the majority shareholder. You are the board. You are the law." I looked at the papers. I saw Rex Harrington's name on the org chart. He was listed as Chief Operating Officer. Beside his name was a salary figure that made me sick, considering he was stealing to support it. Does he know yet? No. The notification is set to go out Monday morning when the markets open. But legally, the transfer happens the second the ink is dry. I picked up the pen. I looked at the signature line. It was not just a business deal. It was an execution. By signing this, I was not just buying a logistics company. I was buying the man who had humiliated me. I was buying the man who had taught my son to be a coward. I signed my name. Jerome Patterson. The ink flowed dark and permanent. I dated it. June 14th. One day before the wedding. "It is done," I said. Leonard nodded. He took the papers and placed them in a briefcase. "There is one more thing, Jerry." He pulled out a second, thinner file. Agent Miller from the FBI called me an hour ago. They have the surveillance from the docks. They saw you pick up the crate. They saw Vinny hand you the false manifest. They are ready to move. They want to raid Rex's house tonight. They want to raid the venue tomorrow morning before the ceremony to secure the contraband. I leaned back in my chair. The leather creaked. No. Leonard blinked. Jerry, this is the FBI. You cannot just say no. They have a warrant. They want to arrest him for interstate smuggling and customs fraud. If they raid the house tonight, the wedding is off. Exactly, I said. If they arrest him tonight, he gets a lawyer. He gets to spin the story. He gets to be the victim of a misunderstanding. He gets to hide the shame. I stood up and walked back to the window. I looked down at the tiny cars moving on the streets below. Call Agent Miller. Tell him I am cooperating fully. Tell him I have the evidence secure. But tell him to hold the raid. Hold it until when? Until the reception, I said. Tell him I want the arrest to happen at the Grand Estate. I want them to walk into the ballroom. I want them to put the cuffs on him while he is holding a glass of that stolen wine. I want every single one of his high society friends to see it. I want Vanessa to see it. I want Brandon to see it. That is cold, Jerry. It is theatrical. The FBI doesn't like theater. They like a slam dunk, Leonard. And I am handing them the CEO of Harbor Logistics on a silver platter with an apple in his mouth. Tell Miller that if he waits, I will give him the internal audits proving the embezzlement too. I will give him the whole package. Tax fraud. Wire fraud. The works. But he has to wait for my signal. Leonard sighed. He took out his phone. I will make the call. But Jerry, are you sure about this? This is your son's wedding. You are going to turn it into a crime scene. It is already a crime scene, Leonard. They murdered my dignity. They murdered my son's character. Now I am just calling the coroner. Make the call, Leonard. Tell them to stand by. Tell them the party starts when the pig says it starts. Leonard walked out of the room to make the call. I stood alone in the office. I felt a strange vibration in the air. It was the hum of total control. I owned the debt. I owned the company. I owned the evidence. Rex Harrington was walking around thinking he was the king of the world, planning his toast, checking his reflection in the mirror. He did not know that he was already a ghost. He was a dead man walking, and I had just signed his death certificate. I put the gold pen back in the drawer. I turned off the lights. I left the chairman in the office. I went back down to the garage, got into the Mercedes, and drove back to the storage unit to retrieve my truck. I had to get back into character. I had a rehearsal dinner to attend, and I had to practice looking like a victim one last time. The Grand Estate sat on the edge of the Pacific like a monument to excess. It was a white marble fantasy with manicured lawns that looked like green velvet and a view of the ocean that cost $50,000 an hour to look at. I drove my truck up the winding driveway. The valet was a kid in a red vest. He looked at my Ford F-150 with a mixture of confusion and disdain. He didn't open my door. I opened it myself. I handed him the keys. "Be careful with the clutch," I said. "It sticks in second gear." He held the keys by the ring with 2 fingers as if they were contaminated. "Right. We will park it in the overflow lot, sir. Down the hill." I didn't argue. I walked up the marble steps to the entrance. I was wearing my navy blue wool blend suit. I had polished my shoes, but the scuffs were deep. I looked exactly like what I was supposed to be, the poor relation, the embarrassment, the mistake on the guest list. The ballroom was a cavern of crystal and light. There were chandeliers the size of small cars hanging from the ceiling. There were floral arrangements of white orchids and hydrangeas that stood 6 feet tall on every table. I knew the invoice for those flowers. $12,000. I looked at the ice sculpture in the center of the room. It was a pair of swans with their necks entwined. I had paid $3,000 for frozen water that was currently melting into a silver tray. I walked to the seating chart. It was a large mirror with names written in gold calligraphy. I scanned the top. The head table. Reginald Harrington. Cynthia Harrington. Brandon Patterson. Vanessa Patterson. I scanned the tables nearest the dance floor. The VIPs. The business associates Rex wanted to impress. The wealthy cousins. I found my name at the very bottom of the list, written in a slightly smaller font, as if the calligrapher had run out of space. Jerome Patterson. Table 19. I looked around the room. Table 1 is here. Table 2 is there. I followed the numbers back away from the stage, away from the dance floor, past the pillars that blocked the view. I found table 19. It was tucked into the far corner directly next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. Every time a waiter walked out, a blast of steam and the smell of industrial dishwasher detergent hit the table. I sat down. There were 8 chairs at table 19. The other 7 were occupied by the band's sound technician, the photographer's 2 assistants, and a group of people who looked like distant relatives of Vanessa's step-cousins. They were the people you invited because you had to, not because you wanted to. The photographer's assistant, a girl with purple hair and a camera around her neck, looked at me. "Are you with the band?" she asked. "No," I said. "I am the groom's father." She choked on her water. She looked at my suit. She looked at the table location. She looked back at me. "Oh. Wow. That is cool." It wasn't cool. It was a statement. It was a geographical declaration of my worth. Rex and Vanessa had put me as far away from the center of power as physically possible without putting me in the parking lot. I watched the room fill up. The guests were a sea of designer silk and tuxedos. They were loud. They were confident. They were the kind of people who never looked at the price tag. I saw Rex holding court near the bar. He was holding a glass of the Chateau Margaux I had hauled in my truck. He was laughing, his face flushed, gesturing with the glass. He was drinking stolen wine paid for with stolen money at a party paid for by the man he was ignoring. The symmetry was perfect. Then I saw Brandon, my son. He walked in with Vanessa. They looked like royalty. Brandon was wearing the custom tuxedo. It fit him perfectly. He looked taller, broader. He looked like he belonged in this world of easy money. He was smiling. He was shaking hands. He was accepting congratulations. He did not look for me. I watched him scan the room. His eyes swept over the VIP tables. He waved at Rex. He blew a kiss to Cynthia. His eyes skimmed over the back of the room, over the pillars, over table 19, and he didn't even pause. He didn't check to see if I had a drink. He didn't check to see if I was alone. He was too busy being the star of the show. A waiter appeared at my table. He was carrying a bottle of house red wine. Not the Margaux, the cheap stuff. He poured a glass for the sound tech. He poured a glass for me. "Excuse me," I said. "Could I try the French wine they are serving at the front?" The waiter looked uncomfortable. "I am sorry, sir. The vintage bottles are reserved for the head table and the VIP section. We have a lovely Cabernet blend for this sector." I looked at the glass of generic red wine. It was the final partition. There was the wine for the gods and the wine for the peasants. "That is fine," I said. "Thank you." I sat there for an hour as the reception began. I watched the first dance. I had to lean to the left to see around a massive floral arrangement that blocked my line of sight. I watched Brandon spin Vanessa around the floor. She whispered something in his ear, and he laughed. It was a pure, happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who thought he had won the lottery. He had no idea that the floor he was dancing on was a trapdoor. I ate a bread roll. I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. The service at table 19 was slow. The waiters focused on the front of the room chasing the tips. By the time they got to us, the bread basket was cold. I buttered a roll and chewed it slowly. I looked at Rex again. He was standing up, clinking a spoon against his glass. The room went quiet. He was going to give a toast. He adjusted his silk tie. He looked powerful. He looked untouchable. "Welcome, everyone," Rex boomed. His voice was amplified by the microphone system I had paid for. "To the grand estate, a venue fitting for my daughter." Applause. Brandon clapped the hardest. "We spared no expense tonight," Rex continued, "because family is the most important investment you can make. When I look at Brandon and Vanessa, I see the future. I see a merger of talents." He paused for laughter. "I want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to thank the universe for favoring the bold. We Harringtons are bold. We take what we want. And tonight we celebrate the harvest." He raised his glass. "To the harvest." "To the harvest," the room echoed. I raised my glass of cheap Cabernet. "To the harvest," I whispered. Rex sat down. He patted Brandon on the back. Brandon leaned over and hugged him. It was a son hugging a father. But it was the wrong father. He was hugging the man who mocked him. He was hugging the man who was actively stealing from the company that essentially belonged to me. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. Sadness is warm. Sadness has tears. This was ice. It was the absolute clarity of a balance sheet that doesn't add up. Brandon had made his choice. He had chosen the shiny object. He had chosen the lie. I looked at my watch. It was almost time. Leonard had texted me 10 minutes ago. The team was in position. The FBI agents were in the kitchen disguised as staff waiting for the signal. The forensic accountants were ready to upload the press release. I took a sip of the bitter wine. I watched my son laugh at something Rex said. I watched Vanessa preen. I sat in the corner next to the kitchen door, smelling the dish soap and the garbage invisible and forgotten. Enjoy the wine, Rex, I thought. Enjoy the applause, Brandon, because the bill is coming due and I am the only one at this party who has the currency to pay it. The pig was done eating slop. The pig was about to tear the barn down. The applause for Rex died down, settling into the murmuring hum of a crowd that had drunk too much champagne. The spotlight shifted. It swung across the room, blinding me for a second before landing on the bride. Vanessa stood up. She took the microphone from her father. She looked radiant. Her dress, a custom Vera Wang that cost more than my first house, shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. She held herself with the poise of a woman who believes the world revolves around her axis. She tapped the microphone. The sound thumped through the speakers, silencing the room. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. That was beautiful. She looked out at the sea of faces. She smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who has just been fed. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this fairy tale possible. When I was a little girl, I dreamed of this day. I dreamed of the castle on the ocean. I dreamed of the flowers that reached the ceiling. And today I am living inside that dream. She turned to Rex and Cynthia. "Mom, Dad, thank you. Thank you for always giving me the best. Thank you for teaching me that standards matter. Thank you for this incredible night. I know you moved mountains to make this happen, and I hope you know how much I adore you." I sat in the back next to the swinging kitchen doors. I listened to her thank the man who had stolen $40,000 from his company expense account to pay for the appetizers. I listened to her thank the woman who had suggested putting me in a state-run facility. She gave them the credit for the venue I paid for. She gave them the glory for the flowers I financed. She didn't stop there. She thanked the wedding planner, a woman named Sharon, who was currently drinking a martini at the bar. She thanked the florist. She thanked the lighting designer. She even thanked the valet staff for parking the cars. She listed everyone. She did not say my name. She did not look at table 19. Brandon sat next to her, staring fixedly at a candle flame. He knew who signed the check. He knew who had liquidated his savings account to secure the date. But he sat there mute, letting his wife erase his father from the narrative. He was complicit in my erasure. Then Vanessa's tone changed. She let out a small, tinkling laugh. We have received so many generous gifts tonight. We are truly blessed. We are going to use them to build our future, to buy our first home. She paused for effect. She reached under the table and pulled out a small wrapped box. It was the gift I had placed on the table earlier that afternoon. It was wrapped in simple blue paper. But I have to share one gift that really stood out, she said, her eyes glinting with malice. We opened a few cards during the cocktail hour, and we found this little treasure from my new father-in-law, Jerry. She held the box up. The spotlight caught the cheap paper. Jerry, where are you? Oh, there you are, back by the kitchen. Wave to everyone, Jerry. She pointed. 300 heads turned. They looked past the VIPs, past the dance floor, into the shadows where I sat. I did not wave. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded on the table. Vanessa tore the paper off the box. She opened it. She pulled out the object inside. It was a compass. It was an antique brass compass from the 1920s that had belonged to my father. It was not expensive in terms of gold or diamonds, but it was authentic. It was a tool for finding your way when you were lost. I had polished it myself. I had written a note that said, "So you never lose your true north." Vanessa held it up by the chain, dangling it like a dead mouse. A compass, she announced. Can you believe it? We are starting our life in the 21st century. We have GPS in our cars. We have iPhones, and Jerry gives us a compass. The room rippled with laughter. It wasn't warm laughter. It was the sharp, jagged laughter of people who are relieved they aren't the target. I guess he thinks we are going camping, Vanessa said, giggling. Or maybe he got it at a garage sale on the way here. It smells a little musty, doesn't it, Brandon? She shoved the compass under Brandon's nose. Brandon flinched. He looked at the compass. He knew that compass. He used to play with it when he was a boy. He used to sit on my lap while I showed him how the needle always found north. It is vintage, Brandon stammered, but his voice was not picked up by the microphone. Vanessa pulled it back. Well, it is the thought that counts, right? Even if the thought is 100 years old and covered in rust. Thank you, Jerry. We will put it somewhere special. Maybe in the garage or the recycling bin. She dropped the compass back into the box with a careless thud. The sound was amplified by the microphone. It sounded like a gavel coming down. Anyway, she said, dismissing me, dismissing the gift, dismissing the 40 years of labor that had produced the man she was marrying. Let's get back to the important stuff. The party. The band started playing a jazz number. The attention of the room shifted back to the center. The guests forgot about the old man in the corner. They forgot about the rusty compass. They went back to their lobster and their stolen wine. I looked at the empty blue wrapping paper on the head table. I looked at Brandon, who was drinking his wine in large, desperate gulps. I looked at the compass box discarded among the crystal glasses. That compass had guided my father through the Depression. It had sat on my dashboard for 1,000,000 miles of hauling freight. It was the most valuable thing I owned, not in dollars, but in direction. And she had turned it into a punchline. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was my phone. A text from Leonard. Assets frozen. Audit team is in the lobby. FBI is at the service entrance, waiting for your signal. I looked at Rex Harrington laughing at the head table. I looked at Vanessa preening for a photographer. I looked at the compass box one last time. She was right about one thing. I did think they needed direction, but since they threw away the compass, I was going to have to show them the way myself. And the road I was about to take them on was going to be very, very rough. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my glass of cheap house wine. It was time to make a toast of my own. It was time to introduce the pig. I stood up from table 19, but I did not go to the microphone yet. A man cannot fight a war on an empty stomach, and my stomach was twisting with a hunger that was both physical and emotional. I had watched the waiters glide past my table for an hour, carrying silver trays of hors d'oeuvres that never seemed to reach the corner by the kitchen doors. It was a calculated starvation. If they could not starve me out of the wedding, they would starve me at the wedding. I walked to the buffet station on the far side of the room. It was an opulent display. There were towers of shellfish, carved ice bowls filled with caviar, and a prime rib station manned by a chef in a tall white hat. I picked up a plate. It was heavy porcelain with a gold rim. I stood in line behind a group of Vanessa's friends, young women in pastel dresses, who spoke in a language of abbreviated words and vocal fry. They ignored me. To them, I was part of the furniture, or perhaps a member of the cleaning staff who had gotten lost. When I reached the prime rib, the chef looked at me. He looked at my suit. He carved a slice of meat that was mostly gristle and fat. He slapped it onto my plate with a wet thud. I did not complain. I added a scoop of mashed potatoes and some green beans that had been cooked until they were gray. I did not care about the quality anymore. I just needed calories. I needed the energy to destroy them. I found a high-top table near the bar that was temporarily empty. I did not return to the exile of table 19. I wanted to be visible. I wanted them to see me eating. I started to eat. I ate quickly. I did not use the proper etiquette. I held the fork in a fist. I wiped my mouth with a paper napkin I had grabbed from the bar because the linen ones were not for people like me. I was fueling the engine. That was when Vanessa found me. She was leading a pack of her friends, a group of 5 or 6 women and men who looked like they had been manufactured in a factory that produced perfect teeth and empty souls. They were holding champagne flutes. They were laughing. Vanessa was in the center, glowing with the adrenaline of being the queen bee. She saw me eating. She stopped. Her eyes narrowed, then widened with a spark of malicious inspiration. She changed direction. She led her entourage straight toward me. She did not greet me. She did not ask if I was enjoying the food. She treated me like an exhibit in a zoo. She turned to her friends, gesturing at me with her free hand, the diamond on her ring finger catching the light. "And here, everyone, is the reality behind the fairy tale," she announced. Her voice was loud enough to cut through the ambient jazz music. Her friends crowded around. They looked at me. They looked at the gristle on my plate. They looked at the paper napkin in my hand. One of the men, a guy in a velvet blazer, wrinkled his nose. "Who is this Ness?" he asked, looking at me as if I were a stain on the carpet. Vanessa laughed. It was a sound that lacked all human warmth. It was the sound of a knife sharpening against a stone. "This," she said, pointing a finger directly at my face, "is Brandon's father. This is Jerome." The group went silent for a second. They assessed me. They saw the cheap suit. They saw the scuffed boots. They saw the way I kept eating, chewing slowly, refusing to stop for them. "Oh," the girl in the pink dress said. "The truck driver." "Retired truck driver," Vanessa corrected, smirking. "And currently the heaviest cross I have to bear." She leaned in closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. "Look at him," she said to her friends. "Look at how he eats. Like he hasn't seen food in a week. It is like feeding time at the farm." The group giggled. It was a nervous, nasty sound. Brandon appeared at the edge of the circle. He was holding a fresh glass of scotch. He looked at me, Then he looked at Vanessa. He saw what was happening. He saw his wife using his father as a prop for a comedy routine. He had a choice. He could step in. He could say stop. He could be a man. He did nothing. He took a sip of his drink and looked at the floor. Vanessa was emboldened by his silence. She turned back to her audience. You know, we tried to get him to wear a tuxedo. We really tried. But you can't put lipstick on a pig, right? It is still just a pig. She paused for the laughter. It came. It rippled through the group. And this she declared, raising her voice so the nearby tables could hear. This is the old fat pig we have to put up with. We have to smile and nod and pretend he belongs here just so he signs the check. But look at him. He is practically licking the plate. It is disgusting. The line hit me like a physical blow. The old fat pig. She had dehumanized me completely. She had reduced 40 years of sacrifice, 40 years of building a legacy to a barnyard animal. She wasn't just insulting my appearance. She was insulting my humanity. I stopped chewing. I swallowed the piece of meat. It went down hard. I looked at her. I looked at her friends who were covering their mouths to hide their smirks. I looked at Brandon. Brandon was laughing. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a small, weak chuckle. He was laughing to fit in. He was laughing because he was afraid of her. He was laughing at his father to buy peace with his wife. That was the moment the last thread snapped. That was the moment the father died, and only the chairman remained. Vanessa wasn't finished. She wanted to twist the knife. But hey, she said, leaning on the table, looking down at me. Every family has one, right? The embarrassment. The one you hide in the closet when company comes over. We just have to wait it out. Nature will take its course eventually. Pigs don't live forever. Her friends roared. They clinked their glasses. To nature, the man in the velvet blazer toasted. I carefully placed my fork on the plate. I wiped my mouth one last time with the paper napkin. I balled the napkin up and set it on the table. I stood up. I was taller than Vanessa. I was taller than her friends. I was broader. The fat she mocked was muscle-built from loading crates and hauling steel. I loomed over them. The laughter died down not because they respected me, but because my presence suddenly felt heavy. It felt dangerous. Vanessa took a half step back, her instinct overriding her arrogance. What she snapped. Are you going to say something, Jerry? Or are you just going to go get seconds? I looked her in the eye. I let her see the absolute zero in my gaze. I am full, Vanessa, I said. I am completely full. I pushed past them. I walked through the group, forcing the man in the velvet blazer to step aside or be knocked over. I did not look back at Brandon. I did not look back at table 19. I walked straight toward the head table where Rex Harrington was sitting. Rex saw me coming. He frowned. He stood up ready to intercept me, ready to tell the drunk uncle to sit down. He didn't know that I wasn't coming to apologize. I was coming to deliver the news. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One single vibration. It was the signal. The doors to the ballroom opened. Not the guest doors. The service doors. The main doors. All of them. Men in dark suits walked in. They did not look like guests. They moved with the precision of sharks. They had earpieces. They had badges on their belts. And behind them, looking terrified, was the hotel manager. The music stopped. The chatter died. The room turned to look. I reached the head table. I picked up a spoon. I tapped it against a crystal glass. The sound rang out clear and sharp, cutting through the silence like a gunshot. Attention, everyone, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice that commanded boardrooms. It was the voice that fired executives. I have a toast to make. Vanessa ran toward me, her face twisted in fury. "Sit down, Jerry. You are ruining everything." I looked at her, I looked at Rex, I looked at the crowd. "No, Vanessa," I said. "I am just balancing the books." I pointed at the screen behind the stage, the massive LED wall that had been showing a slideshow of their engagement photos. "Change the feed." "Leonard." The screen flickered. The photo of Vanessa and Brandon on a beach vanished. In its place, a live news broadcast appeared. The banner at the bottom of the screen was bright red. "Breaking news, federal raid at Harbor Logistics." I turned to Rex. He was staring at the screen. His face went gray. The glass of wine slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound was the starting pistol for the end of their world. The sound of the wine glass shattering against the marble floor was the only thing that could compete with the booming voice of the news anchor on the giant LED screen. Red wine splattered across the hem of Vanessa's white dress, like a spray of arterial blood. But for the first time that night, she did not scream about a stain. She did not look at her dress. She, along with every other person in the ballroom, was staring at the screen. The image was grainy but unmistakable. It was an aerial shot from a news helicopter, hovering over the Harbor Logistics distribution center. Police lights washed the gray concrete in blue and red strobes. Agents in windbreakers with the yellow FBI letters on the back were marching out of the main entrance carrying boxes. The chyron at the bottom of the screen scrolled in urgent red block letters. "Federal raid at Harbor Logistics. CEO Reginald Harrington, implicated in multi-million-dollar smuggling ring. Apex Holdings announces hostile takeover." I watched Rex. He was frozen. His hand was still shaped as if it were holding the glass that was no longer there. His mouth hung open, a slack gash in his pale face. He looked from the screen to me and then back to the screen. His brain was misfiring. He could not process the data. He was the king of the world 5 minutes ago. He was the man who imported vintage wine as lubricant. Now he was a headline. My phone buzzed again. It was Leonard. Email sent. Check his face. I looked at Rex. He reached into his pocket with a trembling hand and pulled out his phone. The screen lit up his face with a ghostly blue light. He had a notification. It was an email. I knew what it said because I had dictated it an hour ago. It was a formal notice from the board of directors of Apex Holdings, notifying him of the acquisition and his immediate suspension pending a criminal investigation. It was signed by the chairman. Jerome Patterson. Rex read the email. I saw his eyes dart back and forth. He read the name. Jerome Patterson. He looked up at me. He looked at my cheap suit. He looked at my scuffed boots. He looked at my face. And then he looked back at the phone. There was a photo attached to the company directory in the email. It was a professional headshot of me wearing a $3,000 suit sitting in the corner office of the Apex Tower. The connection snapped into place. I could literally see the moment his soul left his body. The color drained from his skin so fast, it looked like a magic trick. He began to shake. It started in his hands and traveled up his arms until his entire upper body was vibrating. He looked at me. This time he did not see the truck driver. He did not see the pig. He saw the predator who had been sitting at his table eating his food and counting his crimes. "You," Rex whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. "It is you." Vanessa, who was standing between us, finally tore her eyes away from the screen. She did not understand business. She did not understand acquisitions or federal raids. She only understood that her party was being ruined and that I was standing in the spotlight. "Daddy, what is happening?" she shrieked. "Why is that on the screen? Tell them to turn it off and get him out of here." She pointed at me again. She lunged forward, grabbing the lapels of my cheap jacket. "You did this," she hissed, her face twisted into a mask of ugly fury. You put that video up there. You are trying to embarrass us because you are jealous. You are a sad, pathetic little man. Get out. Get out before I have security throw you out. I did not move. I did not touch her. I just looked at Rex over her shoulder. Tell her, Rex, I said softly. Tell her who owns the building she's standing in. Tell her who owns the company that pays for her car. Tell her who owns you. Rex made a noise that sounded like a dying engine. He stumbled forward. He pushed Vanessa aside, not gently. He needed to get to me. He needed to fix this. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the desperate, fawning terror of a man who knows he is wearing a wire around his own neck. Mr. Patterson. Rex stammered. His voice was high and thin. Mr. Patterson, please. There has been a mistake. A misunderstanding. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know it was you. Vanessa stumbled back, catching herself on the table. She looked at her father. She had never seen him beg. She had never seen him look small. Daddy, what are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. Why are you calling him Mr. Patterson? It is just Jerry. It is just the pig. Rex spun around. The motion was violent. The stress, the fear, the alcohol, and the sudden destruction of his ego all coalesced into a single moment of blind rage. He looked at his daughter. He looked at the woman who had spent the last 6 months spending his stolen money, who had demanded the wedding that exposed his fraud, who was currently insulting the only man on earth who could keep him out of prison. He did not see his princess. He saw a liability. Shut up, Rex screamed. The sound tore through the room. It was louder than the microphone. And then he slapped her. It was an open-handed slap fueled by panic and fury. It connected with a crack that sounded like a whip. Vanessa's head snapped to the side. She stumbled back and fell into the chair behind her. Her hand flew to her cheek. The room went silent. Dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear a heart break. For a second, nobody moved. The guests were statues. The waiters froze with trays in their hands. Brandon stood with his mouth open, staring at his wife on the floor, and his father-in-law standing over her with a shaking hand. You stupid girl, Rex spat, standing over her. Do you have any idea what you have done? Do you have any idea who this is? He pointed a shaking finger at me. This is not Jerry. This is the chairman. This is the man who just bought Harbor Logistics. This is my boss. He turned back to me, his eyes wide and wet with tears of terror. He clasped his hands together in a prayer of supplication. Sir, please. She doesn't know. She is young. She is stupid. We were joking. It was banter. You know how it is. Locker room talk. I have the utmost respect for you, for your success. I can explain the inventory discrepancies. I can explain the wine. It was a misunderstanding. I was holding it for a client. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had bragged about crushing truck drivers. I looked at the man who had called me a dinosaur. He was disintegrating in front of 300 people. A misunderstanding, I repeated. My voice was calm, but it carried to the back of the room. Is that what you call $50,000 of stolen wine, Rex? Is that what you call $2 million in embezzlement? Is that what you call fraud? Rex fell to his knees. He actually dropped to his knees on the dance floor, ruining the sharp crease of his rental tuxedo pants. I can pay it back, he blubbered. I will sell everything. I will pay you back. Just don't let them take me. Please. I have a reputation. I looked down at him. You don't have a reputation anymore, Rex. You have a criminal record. Vanessa was sobbing in the chair, holding her face. Batso. She looked at me through her fingers. The makeup was running down her cheeks in black streaks. She looked at her father on his knees. She looked at the screen where the news was now showing agents loading boxes into a van. The reality was finally piercing the bubble of her narcissism. She realized that the money was gone. The power was gone. And the man she had called a pig was the one holding the slaughtering knife. Brandon finally moved. He walked over to Vanessa. He didn't touch her. He looked at me. "Dad," he whispered. You are Apex Holdings." I looked at my son. I saw the calculation in his eyes. I saw him doing the math. He wasn't thinking about protecting his wife. He wasn't thinking about his father's dignity. He was thinking about the inheritance. He was thinking about the promissory note he had signed. He was realizing that he had bet against the house and the house had just revealed a royal flush. "I am Apex Holdings, Brandon," I said, "and I am the man who holds your mortgage." I turned back to the crowd. They were staring at me with a mixture of fear and awe. These were people who worshipped money, and they had just realized that the most powerful man in the room had been invisible to them because they were too busy looking at labels. I tapped the spoon against the glass again. "I believe the party is over," I said. Rex grabbed the hem of my pants. "Sir, please." "The FBI. You can stop them. You can tell them it is an internal matter." I pulled my leg away. I dusted off the fabric where he had touched me. "I could, Rex, but I won't. You see, I have a philosophy about dead weight." "You cut it loose," I gestured to the back of the room. The service doors swung open again. This time it wasn't waiters. It was Agent Miller and 6 federal agents in tactical vests. They walked onto the dance floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. They walked straight to the head table. Agent Miller looked at me. I nodded. He looked at Rex, who was still on his knees. Reginald Harrington Miller said, his voice bored and professional, "You are under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and grand larceny. Stand up." Rex tried to stand, but his legs gave out. 2 agents grabbed him by the arms and hauled him up. They spun him around. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut was loud in the silent room. Cynthia screamed. It was a shrill, piercing sound. She rushed forward, grabbing at the agents. "You can't do this. He is a respected man. This is a wedding." "Ma'am, step back or you will be detained for obstruction," Miller said. They began to drag Rex away. He was crying openly now, snot running down his face, begging me, begging the air, begging God. Jerry, help me. We are family. We are family." I watched him go. I watched them drag him past the ice sculpture of the swans, past the cake that cost $5,000, past the guests, now filming everything on their iPhones. When he was gone, the silence returned. It was heavier now. It was the silence of a crater after the bomb has gone off. I looked at Vanessa. She was still in the chair, her hand on her cheek, where the red mark of her father's hand was beginning to bloom. She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with hate, but also fear. Pure, unadulterated fear. And then I looked at Brandon. He was standing alone in the middle of the dance floor. He looked at his wife. He looked at the door where his father-in-law had been taken out. He looked at me. "Dad," he said. I didn't answer. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the eviction notice for his apartment. I walked over to him. I placed it in his hand. "You should probably read this," I said. "It is time to grow up, Brandon." I turned around. I walked toward the exit. The guests scrambled out of my way. They looked at me with terror. They looked at me with respect. I didn't care about either. I just wanted a burger. The pig had cleared the mud. Now it was time to leave the pen. I looked at Leonard, who was standing by the sound booth. He was holding a tablet, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. He was waiting for my command. The room was already in chaos, but I was not finished. I wanted the punctuation mark. I wanted to make sure that no one in that room ever forgot the name Jerome Patterson. I nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Leonard tapped the screen. The massive LED wall behind the head table flickered. The slideshow of Brandon and Vanessa in Paris financed by stolen money vanished into static. A low hum vibrated through the speakers building in intensity until it became a sharp digital screech that made the guests cover their ears. Then the image stabilized. It was not a photo. It was a live broadcast from the local news station, but this time it was accompanied by a scrolling ticker of financial documents. I turned to the crowd. My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a judge passing sentence. "You all came here to witness a union," I said. "But instead, you are going to witness a liquidation." The screen behind me exploded with color. It was a split screen. On the left was the live footage of the FBI raid at the warehouse. On the right was a series of scanned documents, invoices, bank transfers, emails, and right in the center of the documents was Rex Harrington's signature. The news anchor's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers, drowning out the whimpers of the bride. "Breaking news tonight, as Apex Holdings, the private equity giant, has released a forensic audit revealing a massive embezzlement scheme at Harbor Logistics." Rex, who was being held by the agents, twisted his head to look at the screen. He saw his own emails magnified to 10 feet tall. He saw the purchase order for the vintage wine listed as industrial grease. He saw the wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The anchor continued. "Sources confirm that COO Reginald Harrington has been skimming operational funds for 5 years to support a gambling addiction and a lavish lifestyle. The total amount misappropriated is estimated at over $2 million. The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. They looked at the screen, and then they looked at the man in the handcuffs. The illusion was shattered. The golden boy was not a genius businessman. He was a common thief. I walked over to Vanessa. She was staring at the screen, her mouth open in a silent scream. I pointed at the scrolling documents. "Look closely, Vanessa," I said. "Do you see that invoice? That is for your engagement ring. Do you see that transfer? That is for your honeymoon. Every diamond you wear, every trip you took, every bite of food you ate was paid for with stolen money. You called me a pig. You called me cheap. But at least the money in my pocket belongs to me." Agent Miller tightened his grip on Rex's arm. He spun him around to face the guests. "Reginald Harrington, you are under arrest for 18 counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, and grand larceny," Miller announced. His voice was bored professional. He had done this 1,000 times, but never at a black tie event. Rex collapsed. His legs simply stopped working. The agents had to hold him up, dragging him across the dance floor. He was sobbing now, a broken, wet sound that was pathetic to hear. "Jerry, please," he wailed. "I can fix this. I can pay it back. Don't let them take me." I watched him being dragged away. I watched his expensive Italian shoes scrape against the floor, leaving black scuff marks on the white marble. "You can't pay it back, Rex," I said to his retreating back. "You are bankrupt, and so is your soul." Cynthia tried to run after him, but another agent stepped in her path. "Ma'am, you need to stay here," he said. "We have a warrant for the house. We need to confiscate all assets purchased with illicit funds. That includes the jewelry you are wearing right now." Cynthia let out a shriek and clutched her necklace as if it were a life preserver. The guests began to back away. No one wanted to be close to the blast radius. They were checking their phones, realizing that they were part of the news story. They were the extras in the downfall of the Harrington Empire. I turned back to the screen. The news report was showing a photo of me now. The official Apex Holdings portrait. The headline read, "Mystery Billionaire Behind Apex Holdings Revealed as Jerome Patterson." I looked at Brandon. He was staring at my photo on the screen. He looked at the confident, powerful man in the picture, and then he looked at the man standing in front of him in the cheap suit. "You own it all," he whispered. "You own everything." I signaled Leonard again. The screen went black. The show was over. The silence returned heavy and suffocating. I own the truth. Brandon, I said, and the truth is expensive. The ballroom was clearing out fast. The guests were fleeing the scene of the crime like rats sensing water on the deck of a sinking ship. But the main characters were still there. They were paralyzed by the blast radius of the truth. Rex was gone, hauled away in a federal van, but the wreckage he left behind was standing right in front of me. I turned my attention to Brandon. My son. The man who had laughed when his wife called me a pig. He was standing next to Vanessa, holding her hand, trying to offer comfort she did not want. He looked at me with the eyes of a child who has broken a window and is waiting for the belt. It is not over, Brandon, I said. I reached into the inside pocket of my cheap suit jacket. I pulled out the fireproof envelope. I opened it slowly. I took out the document he had signed on my kitchen table. The paper crinkled in the silence. It was a loud, aggressive sound. Do you remember this? I asked. Brandon stared at the paper. He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed in his throat. Dad, please. Not here. Not now. I unfolded the document. I smoothed it out on the table where the compass box still lay discarded. You signed this 3 days ago, Brandon. You signed a secured promissory note for $150,000. You used the money to pay for this venue, to pay for this party, to impress this woman. I pointed at Vanessa. She looked up, her mascara smeared her eyes wide with confusion. What is he talking about, Brandon? She snapped. You said you had savings. You said you closed the Lakeside deal. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless bark. He has not closed a deal in 6 months, Vanessa. He is broke. He borrowed every dime for this wedding from me. And he signed a contract that says if he defaults, or if I deem the security of the loan to be at risk, I can call the debt immediately. I looked at Brandon. I deem the security at risk. I am calling the loan. Brandon stepped back. He shook his head. I can't pay you, Dad. You know I can't. I don't have it. I know, I said. That is why we have collateral. I held out my hand. The keys, Brandon. He looked at my open palm. What keys? The Audi, I said. The lease is in your name, but I am the guarantor. And since you cannot pay me the $150,000 you owe me, I am seizing the asset to mitigate my losses. Give me the keys. Vanessa grabbed Brandon's arm. Her nails dug into his tuxedo jacket. You are taking his car. You can't do that. How are we supposed to get home? I looked at her cold. You can take a taxi, or you can walk. It is good for the heart. Brandon trembled. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the key fob. He dropped it into my hand. It was heavy. It felt like justice. And the apartment? I continued. What about the apartment? Vanessa shrieked. That is our home. We just redecorated the nursery. It is not your home, I corrected her. It is a rental unit. And guess who pays the rent? Guess who signed the lease as the primary financial backer? I pulled out my phone. I showed them the email I had sent to the landlord that morning. I canceled the direct deposit, Brandon, and I withdrew my guarantee. The landlord has already issued a notice to vacate. You have until noon tomorrow to get your things out. After that, the locks change. Vanessa looked at Brandon. She looked at him as if she had never seen him before. She looked at him not as a husband, not as a partner, but as a bad investment. She did the math in her head. Her father was going to prison, and all his asset sets were frozen. Her husband was unemployed, in debt to his father for 6 figures, homeless and carless. You are broke, she whispered. The horror in her voice was genuine. You are completely broke. Worse than broke, I said, stepping closer. He is negative. He owes me a fortune. And since you are legally married as of 3 hours ago, congratulations, Vanessa. You just married his debt. In this state, marital debt is shared property. You owe me $150,000 too. She screamed. It was a primal sound of a gold digger who realized she had dug straight into a septic tank. She shoved Brandon away from her. He stumbled and fell onto the table, knocking over a tower of champagne glasses. You liar, she screamed at him. You told me you had money. You told me your father was a nobody. You tricked me. Brandon looked up from the broken glass. He was bleeding from a small cut on his hand. I did it for you, Ness. I wanted to give you the dream. I walked over to the table. I picked up the box with the compass. I put it in my pocket. The dream is over, I said. Now you have to wake up. I turned to Leonard, who was waiting by the door. File the lien on his future wages, Leonard. If he ever gets a job, I want 20% of his paycheck until the day I die. I walked out of the ballroom. I walked past the crying bride and the broken groom. I walked out into the cool night air. I walked past the valet stand. I did not take my truck. I pressed the button on the Audi key fob. The lights flashed. I got into my son's car. It smelled like new leather and arrogance. I adjusted the seat. I drove away, leaving them in the ruins of the castle they could not afford. The pig had taken the slop bucket and left them to starve. I paused on the marble steps of the entrance. I wanted to hear the silence I had created, but instead I heard a scream that sounded like glass being ground in a disposal. It was Vanessa. She had not accepted defeat. She was fighting reality with the only weapon she had left, which was volume. I turned back one last time to watch the final act of the tragedy through the open ballroom doors. She was standing amidst the overturned chairs and the spilled wine. Her dress was ruined. The hem was black with dirt and red with wine. She looked like a fallen angel who had landed in a gutter. She was screaming at Mr. Martinez, the venue manager. You cannot kick us out, she shrieked. We have the room until midnight. Bring me another bottle of champagne. Bring me the lobster. I am the bride. Mr. Martinez did not look impressed. He looked at his tablet. The contract has been voided, ma'am, he said calmly. The payment guarantee was withdrawn. Unless you have $53,000 in cash right now, you are trespassing. Trespassing, Vanessa screamed. She grabbed a crystal vase from a nearby table and threw it. It shattered against the wall, missing Martinez by inches. This is my wedding. My father owns this town. Your father is in federal custody, Martinez replied. And you are becoming a liability. Security. Two large men in black blazers stepped forward. They had been waiting in the shadows. They moved with the efficiency of bouncers who were used to dealing with drunks, not brides in couture gowns. Vanessa saw them coming. She panicked. She looked around for a shield. She saw Brandon. He was sitting on the floor, holding his head in his hands, bleeding on his tuxedo. She lunged at him. She grabbed him by the hair and yanked his head back. Do something, you coward, she screamed in his face. Tell them to stop. Pay them. Fix this. You promised me a life. You promised me everything. Brandon did not fight back. He just looked at her with dead eyes. I have nothing, Ness, he whispered. I have absolutely nothing. She slapped him. It was the echo of the slap she had given me hours ago, but this time it had no power. It was just sad. I hate you, she screamed. I hate you and your pig father and your stupid poverty. I should have married the banker. I should have listened to my mother. You are trash, Brandon. You are just trash. The security guards reached her. One grabbed her left arm. The other grabbed her right. They lifted her. Her feet dangled off the ground, kicking at the air. Get your hands off me, she wailed. Do you know who I am? I am a Harrington. You are a disturbance, ma'am, one of the guards said. They began to drag her toward the exit. She fought them. She dug her heels into the expensive carpet. She bit the hand of one of the guards. He did not flinch. He just tightened his grip. I watched them drag her out. She passed right by me as I stood on the steps. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. Her hair was a bird's nest. "Jerry," she screamed. "Jerry, tell them to stop. I will invite you to Thanksgiving. I will let you see the grandkids. Just pay the bill." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me a pig. I looked at the woman who had tried to erase me. "I already have plans for Thanksgiving, Vanessa," I said. The guards hauled her down the stairs. Her dress caught on the rough stone of the steps and ripped with a loud tearing sound. A piece of white silk was left behind, like a flag of surrender. They dragged her all the way to the curb and dumped her on the asphalt next to the overflow parking lot. She lay there on the ground, weeping into the dirt. She was alone. Her parents were gone. Her husband was broken. Her audience had fled. I turned away. I walked to the Audi. I got in. I did not feel guilt. I felt the satisfaction of a job finished. The barn was clean. The pest control was complete. I sat in the Audi for a moment with the engine idling. I looked through the tinted glass at the boy I had raised. Brandon was still on the floor amidst the shattered glass and spilled wine. He pulled himself up to his knees. His custom tuxedo was ruined. His face was a map of total defeat. He looked at the car. He knew I was inside. He scrambled up and ran toward the driver's side window. He banged on the glass with frantic, desperate hands. I rolled the window down exactly 1 inch. "Dad," he sobbed. "Dad, please. You cannot leave me here. I have nowhere to go." They took the apartment keys. "Vanessa hates me. I am going to be homeless." I looked at him. I did not see a victim. I saw a man who had made a series of calculations and got the math wrong every single time. He had bet his father against his wife and he had lost both. "You are not homeless, Brandon," I said. "You have a brain, you have 2 hands, you have a college degree that I paid for, you have more than I had when I started." "But I have debt," he wailed, gripping the window frame. "I owe you a fortune. How can I start over with that hanging over me?" "That debt is your tuition," I replied. "It is the cost of learning that loyalty is not a variable you can trade. You sold me out for a seat at a table where you were the main course. You laughed when she dehumanized me. You signed a contract without reading it because you thought I was too stupid to enforce it." He tried to reach through the crack in the window. "I am your son. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything I said. It means I love you enough to let you fail. If I bail you out now, you will never be a man. You will just be a parasite looking for a new host." I rolled the window up. He shouted. He slapped the glass. I put the car in gear. I drove away. I watched him in the rearview mirror until he was just a black speck against the white marble of the estate, shrinking into nothingness. I drove down the winding hill to the overflow lot, where the valet had banished me hours ago. My Ford F-150 was waiting there, faithful and rusty under the moonlight. It looked like an old friend. I parked the sleek Audi next to it. I took the keys to the German car and tossed them deep into the bushes. I did not want it. It was poisoned fruit. I got into my truck. The seat smelled like old coffee and hard work. It smelled like dignity. Leonard was waiting for me in his sedan parked 2 spots over. He got out and walked over holding a paper bag from Burger King. "You hungry, boss?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Starving," I said. He handed me a burger wrapped in grease-stained paper. I unwrapped it. It was lukewarm. It was squashed. It was the best thing I had seen all day. Leonard took a bite of his own burger. "The FBI has Harrington in custody. The assets are frozen. The press release is viral. The stock is actually up 3 points on the news of the leadership change. The market likes a ruthless chairman." I chewed slowly, savoring the salt and the fat. Good work, Leonard. What now? He asked. You have a company to run. No, I said. I have a board to run the company. I have you to run the board. I think I am finally ready to retire. Leonard smiled. The yacht. The yacht, I confirmed. 80 feet. Italian design. Cash. I want to be on the water by Tuesday. No guests, no parties, just the ocean. I started the engine. The truck rumbled. It was a rough, honest sound. I pulled out of the lot. I drove past the main entrance of the grand estate one last time. I saw the flashing lights of the police cars illuminating the facade. I saw Vanessa sitting on the curb screaming at a security guard who was ignoring her. I saw the ruins of a dynasty built on fraud. I took another bite of my burger. I turned up the radio. I drove into the night, leaving the wreckage in the rearview mirror. The silence in the cab was perfect. The pig was free. In the end, this wasn't just about money. It was about the currency of respect. My son and his in-laws saw a price tag where they should have seen a human being. They measured worth in dollars, but true wealth is found in integrity, loyalty, and the quiet dignity of an honest life. I spent 40 years building an empire, but I realized my most important investment failed because I shielded my son from the very struggles that build character. You cannot buy class, and you certainly cannot buy a backbone. Sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is let his child hit rock bottom so they finally learn how to stand on their own. If you believe respect should never depend on a bank account, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where justice is served cold.